While forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi are making advances on the ground, the Libyan leader has lost a member of his inner circle. Foreign Minister Moussa Koussa resigned from his post and defected to England. He is the highest-ranking Libyan official to resign since the no-fly zone was implemented. Meanwhile, pro-Gaddafi forces have reversed almost all of the gains made by rebels since the airstrikes began. Opposition forces are asking coalition members for more weapons. And in Washington, lawmakers grilled White House officials over the role the United States will play in the conflict. After a closed-door meeting, members from both parties emerged with more questions, particularly about whether to arm the rebels.
They said that they had not yet made a decision on whether or not they're going to arm the rebels. And that's another thing. Why haven't we made some plans or had some long-term plans before we went in there? And who's going to pick up the tab for all this?
Last night, we learned the United States has had CIA operatives in Libya since the airstrikes began. The agency's role hasn't been made clear, but operatives did help in the rescue of a downed fighter jet last week. For more insight, we are joined by Daniel Levy. He is a senior fellow at the New America Foundation. Thanks for being with us. All right, let's talk about these CIA operatives first of all. Could this possibly open the way to ground forces in Libya?
I don't think anyone's going to be surprised at this news that there were CIA operatives on the ground. I think when we heard the president on Monday night, he was showing a healthy caution towards expending American personnel and riches in Libya, riches that America doesn't have right now for another third war in that part of the world. So I think the president is going to be very cautious about having troops on the ground. He's made a commitment not to have troops on the ground. I imagine that this is as far as one gets, and I imagine they're not very happy that this has been leaked.
Well, it's very apparent that the rebels do need help. They've lost, as we just mentioned, the gains that they had made since the airstrike. So the question is this, and we heard a little bit about that. Should we start arming, we being the coalition, start arming the rebels with weapons? Is that a good idea?
Well, you could argue that the last thing you need there right now is more weapons. The issue is also not just the weaponry at the disposal of the rebels. They need the training to use those weapons. Training doesn't happen overnight. They need the command structures. They need the numbers. This is a pretty ragtag bunch. Some are ex-military, some are people who've defected from Gaddafi's army or reservists, but many of them are students, young professionals, full of enthusiasm, but not really hardened fighters. There is a concern, of course, as to whether there might be more extreme elements.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that because a top NATO commander said that a small number of the rebels may be involved in Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah. This obviously is a major concern, right?
Well, I think it may be an overblown concern. I tend to think that if there were a serious cohort of hardened fighters who'd been in Iraq, been in Afghanistan, come out of Al-Qaeda training, you imagine they'd be putting on a better show than these rebels have been putting on so far, really, as fighters. So while there is a likelihood that you're going to have pious, devout Muslims, probably some with those leanings, but I don't think there is an organized Al-Qaeda presence in those ranks. The fear is that you create chaos and you create ungoverned areas, and perhaps by pumping more weaponry in, you do create conditions where Al-Qaeda could get a foothold, and that might spill over into neighboring countries as well.
So then what is the solution? If the airstrikes aren't working as well because the rebels have lost the ground they had gained, you say it's a ragtag group, they're not equipped, they are not organized enough for weapons, then what's the answer?
Well, I don't think there have been any good options from the beginning, Betty. I think the situation we're in today, the president has the following choices. Number one, and it's always a temptation, mission creep. Get more involved, arm the rebels, perhaps send troops onto the ground. Then you begin to own this situation. Then you really do begin to see America engaging in a third war. Second option, pursue a diplomatic route. It's not clear that one is available right now. It's not at all clear that Colonel Gaddafi is looking for a nice villa somewhere on the coast in order to retire in peace without having to go to The Hague and to face a trial. If neither of those options are available, then you could see some kind of ceasefire, the division of Libya, not a good option. What you're probably left with is to pursue a set of policies which maximize the chance that you might get lucky. What does that mean? try and bring over more troops, try and get more of the troops to defect, try and bring over more people like the foreign minister to leave Gaddafi ever more isolated. And I imagine people will be thinking, especially with the intelligence that Foreign Minister Kousa might offer, people will be thinking, how might Gaddafi meet a rather unfortunate accident?
This seems a lot more complicated than originally thought. At the onset, President Obama said it's going to be days, not weeks. Looking back now and looking at what we're facing as we watch this play out, was that a miscalculation?
I think the line that the president and senior administration officials have used, which is, what would they be being asked now had they not have acted when Benghazi was about to face what appeared to be a serious onslaught with the potential of very significant civilian casualties? I think they will still adhere to that line as having justified what they did. I think everyone knew that this wasn't going to be easy because it wasn't just about humanitarian protection. This is a civil war, and the question now is, how do you deal with the civil war? I don't think getting more involved as the United States is going to help in that situation. Like I say, I think you have to create maximum opportunity to influence events in Libya without yourself getting too embroiled, without owning it, and without causing resentment that America is back at war in a Muslim country.
It's something we are watching very closely. Daniel Levy, thanks so much for your insight. We always appreciate it.